It's me, Mario. Hey. Understandable. Oh, the time change has happened and everything is just out of whack.
Yeah, that's it happens.
So unfortunately happens, especially when I have to get up really early tomorrow
Well,
for
the
work.
EU might be banning it, right? So
Hopefully.
I figured might as well finish what we started yesterday today. So let's see, what do we start with? I think we're gonna start by adding a bit of a wash to the Knight, the Outrider. Yeah, I think I'm gonna grab myself a blue wash to shade this thing with.
Yeah, that whole Arctic effect to it is a little bit hard to do.
Yeah, I think my best option is to give it just like a bit of a bluish vibe, and that should probably work reasonably well. And I'm going to like paint the sword as if it like frosted. And that'll have to do. It's not my favorite of the minis around this from this set anyway, so what we're grabbing for this is more Games Workshop washes, because Citadel washes are actually excellent.
Good. Technically, you as the viewers can do your own washes if you dilute inks enough, but you would have to know what you're doing, and most of the time you won't be able to tell what you're doing if you're not a pro.
And it's so much extra work that if you want to have a specific shade that is just salt, it's generally a lot easier to just buy it.
Yeah, especially because washes usually encompass varnishes, stuff like that.
Yeah, some kind of flow improver.
Mm-hmm.
These are still all acrylic washes as well, so it's all water-based acrylic, but
When I was actually like doing real life painting, basically you had a selection of special enhancers to acrylic paint to change the way the paint flowed, and I believe the same style of enhancers are used to basically increase the drying time, increase the flow, etc., etc.
yeah, make it create more of a better gradient instead of blobbing up.
Mm-hmm. But the problem with all of that is that unless you know what you're doing and using all of that stuff is actually advanced techniques in painting, yeah, you're going to ruin things a lot.
Yeah, it's very easy if you're painting and not knowing what you're doing. If you're trying to do fancy stuff, you're gonna fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
The trick is there's a lot of not fancy techniques that you can use to still make things look nice. One of the worst things you can do when you start painting is trying to overreach immediately. Once you get a good grasp of the basics, you can get really nice looking stuff with relatively limited effort. I quite like the shade. It's a very dark blue, so it doesn't make the model look like fully blue, but it just gives us that bluish tint to it. Sometimes that isn't what you want, but in this case it's pretty much what I want. We don't want to have the mini looking like bright, like as if the armor is actually blue. We just want it to have a bit of a blue-ish look. Turning down the background music a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little bit too loud when I had the stream open. I'm not going to say a whole lot right now because I need to actually find the piece I wanted to work on.
You're doing your drawing stream over on Picarto again?
Of course. I think this week I streamed about 48 hours worth of drawing on Picarto. And the people called me crazy. There we go. That's the Dark Souls piece I wanted to. The problem with streaming drawings is that drawing programs take a humongous amount of space if you're actually doing like paintings with like resolutions I usually do. And until I bought 16 gigabytes this year, it has been an increasing problems to actually finish artwork on stream.
Yeah, you need to download more RAM.
Oh, I need to download 60 more. It's getting to the point of a problem. I have not enough RAM downloaded. Let me pull up Dark Souls 2, my second monitor, as a reference.
Having reference images for a lot of stuff is very handy. Even you're generally not like copying it straight up. But just for comparing how colors look together and stuff like that, or how proportions work on certain things.
Well, for the most part, like it's a lot of details on Dark Souls armor.
Yeah, that kind of armor, like as we talked about yesterday, that kind of like detail and texture is what makes Dark Souls look Dark Souls.
It's gonna be
I want to keep the wash on the face relatively limited, simply so it'll be relatively bright and pop out a bit compared to some of the other parts. Especially because considering like the design and everything, this model is not going to have a lot of points that will easily like draw the eye. You can't, with the color scheme it has lore-wise, you can't really use like spot colors to easily do that. Which would normally be a thing like, well, the classic thing for just like humanoids or like fantasy or sci-fi is like, you've got the facial skin and like the hand and stuff, and those are like bright spots compared to a lot of the other model. So eye is generally drawn to it, and by where those things are, the things in between there are generally like, that's where your eye falls first when you look at the model. And you can use that to make the viewer focus on certain details. Because with a miniature, like with pretty much anything, a first impression is incredibly relevant. And one thing to really keep in mind if you're painting miniatures is display painting versus like tabletop painting, and in particular how you want to execute the painting of your details. Do you want the model to look good from like 2 feet away, like the model is on a table and you're looking at it as you play? Or do you want it to look good in extreme close-up? Because those things require significantly different techniques and approaches in some cases. Not techniques, but like how you want to execute certain things.
Like if you're doing, well, also like display painting is a little bit different, because a lot of people do like with display painting, like make little dioramas of things, because that just adds to the story.
Looks like it's basically just the left arm to go on this guy. So yeah, what we need to paint today is, well, for this guy, once this wash is dry, we'll need to paint his sword and maybe do a little touch-up thing. I might want to like grab my silver and add some extra highlights at a few points, something like that. For the wing at night, what I'll need to do is I'll need to add some washes on a few spots there. Most notably, and I'll need to paint up those little hussar-like wings he's got on his back. Because those need to be white. So I'm going to be painting them a light color and then highlighting with white. And for the gargoyle we need to add some green to the metal, for which we'll be using washes. And then we'll need to touch up the bases, but that's not terribly interesting.
It's a kind of a sad thing that basically, since it's a board game, that that base is going to be mostly on unchanged, because you could do so much stuff with it.
There's a lot of room for creativity and interesting base design for Dark Souls. Even if it's like not sculpting anything, but just like painting floor patterns and stuff like that. Or adding a little bit of scenery from the location you fight the enemy in-game. But in this case I'm not doing that because it might distract from the thing, and there's various textures on the tiles that you might be using, so it might clash with that as well, which is... I'm basically just keeping it simple. Which is generally a legitimate option. Okay, for the wing at night I'm also going to use this blue shade on the cloth, because that needs a bit of a blue shade that ties it a bit together further. Not going to be too heavy. And it's just going to be on the cloth there. You can just put this shade over pretty much all of a model, but you can also just limit it to certain areas to give that effect just on that area, tie that together. And for the knight, I like that the blue tabard just pops out compared to the metal armor. And then you have the gold for a little bit of an extra color, but not too much of it, because you don't want to have him be maximum bling. This ain't the Londo Bros. It's like Schmo is basically just gold stuff. Ornstein is just gold and red.
Ornstein has that plume, if I recall correctly.
And some cloth on his, like he's got like a little bit of a cloth around his crotch area.
True enough.
Basically, there's a couple of pieces of like plume and cloth that are bright red, and the rest of him is basically also gold. So in that case, for that I used like a bunch of dry brushes and some washes as well to try and make the gold pop, but still make it look worn, because Dark Souls look
worn. Okay, so
for the armor on this guy, big question I think is, do we want to use a brown wash or a black wash?
For the Outrider?
No, for the Winged Knight.
That's a hard thing to say. It's
I'm also considering just not adding a wash and on all of it, and just adding it on like the chainmail and the blade and stuff.
Does it have like those little indentations in the armor, like a decorative one, like in the steel set?
It's got like the nice patterns and the divine patterns and stuff, but they pop out pretty nicely with what I've done so far with dry brushes.
And
I might actually end up hiding more of it if I add washes there.
Yeah. If it pops up nicely with it, I would say only chainmail. Chainmail is like really needs.
It's got pretty nice definition already, but yeah, I'm gonna add it on there. And like the giant blade needs a bit more definition. Also makes it pop out a bit compared to its hafts. So that's also something to keep in mind. I'm going to use the brown shade for that. I might as well pop it on a couple of places on the gold as well. So yeah, adding the brown wash on this blade, you can see it gives it more of a dirty, worn look.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. You can see on this blade that how many cuts there is. Like it looks
like
used.
The surface itself is uneven as well, which is really nice. That's the kind of texture stuff that really works for the Souls look. And they could have easily fucked it up and not have had that texture as a model if they'd just been lazy with it. That's something I really like out the design for the models for this game. They actually made the proper effort to make it look Dark Souls in terms of texture. Which is something you miss in a lot of like typical fantasy miniatures. And also the texture helps in making this giant blade actually interesting to look at. So, if this had been nice and neat and clean, it would have just been a boring slab of metal. With this, I'm actually going to take off a bit of the excess here, which you can just do by having a wet but like a moist but mostly clean brush and just like brush some of it off again, because I don't want it to be too brown, too dirty. now we're grabbing a green shade. I've got actually two green shades, one that's more of a camo green and one that's more of like a vibrant green. I'm planning to use the more vibrant one on this because the tone's a bit stronger for that. And
Yeah.
we want the greenish stuff on the metals to really pop a bit. Because right now this model is very brown. Which makes sense, we had it's dry brush with shades of brown and then it had a brown wash, so of course it's gonna be brown. But adding green in there makes it a bit more varied as well.
And when did I actually start working on this piece? 26th of April 2016. That's where I started on this piece, and I still have not finished it. Because it caused my computer to lock up when I tried to load it. That's the amount of detail I love to put on my paintings.
Yeah, you start with giga resolution, and then you could scale it down if you want a smaller image, right?
Yes, that's because recently I actually started using as little layers as possible. Layers are a crutch. If you're a new artist, use layers because that's easier to fix mistakes. If you're when you actually start doing things well enough, you can basically just throw away about 10-20 layers for like details and just shove them on one layer. It's really how you organize your workflow. That's the amount of layers you will want.
You won't fuck up enough that you need the layers for backup, basically.
Yeah, basically. Because sometimes I like to put like the head on a separate layer because that's usually going to define the proportions of the picture, and that's usually a good thing to scale if something looks off.
Yeah. Means you can just like easily look at how many heads is again without having other stuff in the way.
Yes, exactly.
Let me grab my reference images again. Yes.
I think the biggest resolution picture I've made was 7,000 by 10,000. Not counting the the crawl I did this year for Fortune Cup, because that was like made out of several images. I just had to like string them together. But yeah, and usually at those resolutions you can do some fine detail, and people actually say like, why are you like doing detail by hand? It's if you do things by texture, like Photoshop texture, people will notice. I mean, most of the people don't care. Like most of the people don't really need the fine detail work. But at the end of the day, it just looks more organic if you do the details yourself instead of relying on the machine.
Filters, yeah.
Yeah.
People are good at pattern recognition. They are gonna recognize the filter.
Well, I was talking with my friend the other day as well. It was like, dude, why is your artwork like costing more than mine, and why does it take long? I'm like, well, I do a lot of detail work. And he was like, dude, you need to be faster. You need to like charge less than you sell more. I'm like, no, like I'm I'm pretty confident if you're good enough, someone will always want your artwork.
Especially if you are available for something that's niche enough.
That's why I always yell at people, look, you can commission armor from me. It will cost you like $150, but you'll probably get the best deal you can get.
adding the greens now, and I'm like keeping the green away from the cutting areas. That's one of the things I have to do here. So like they would be like through use be less worn is the idea.
Yeah.
And
I did not.
for example, on the shoulder panels, I don't just apply it everywhere. I apply it a bit in patches, so make it look uneven. That's something I kind of did with the haft as well, which is now quite a bit greener than.
I think you're right. The wash green looks a lot closer to what the actual model in game looked like. I didn't know that there are green washes. That's my surprise.
Of course, there's also purples and blues. One
I
thing I
knew
really
about
enjoy as well for humanoids is there's Citadel's Reichland flesh shade, which is skin tone shade, which is really nice.
they did
painting skin.
Oh, because the problem with skin is that you have to put extra care to it, especially when painting like people with patches of fur and skin, like Skaven. You need to like the skin underneath the fur is usually whiter than the usual human skin, so you cannot really use the guides for painting skin on real people that are available to most like model sites that deal with like World War II models. And there's a very good guide on Games Workshop. I don't know if there still is, but to paint Skaven models, there was like a perfect guide for it.
Well, actually, GW, what they've done, if you're a starting painter, Warhammer TV has a ridiculous amount of actually excellent painting tutorials. And they use Citadel's ranges of paints there, but you can use equivalents from other ranges or mix your own, so that's not really a thing. But they've got really good tutorials, both for beginner level and for highly advanced level. It's one of the better things they've done recently in that regard, in the last couple of years. Like, sadly, they don't. Instead of having those things like on their website as text-only articles, they have really nice videos in high resolution and everything. And
yeah,
tutorials are the best way to show how to paint things.
Yeah, because like the books used to have like step by step.
And they still do, but not as in depth as you can go on individual videos. Like here's a
yeah,
video purely on painting Warpstone, for example. That kind of stuff is.
Painting Warpstone and painting the gem on the prism tank is one of the two hardest things to do. Especially the prism tank gem has those little polish, when you polish a gem, there will be like little imperfections, little cuts, and apparently Fire Prism should have those to like make the gem stand out. So.
Yeah, make it look like an actual gem instead of the...
Yeah.
Now, G-Dubs has like a shortcut for gem painting. Now they've got like a gem texture paint thing, but that's for their technical range. I haven't tried that myself, don't know how good that is.
I actually miss German bro coming to do his paint streams. I guess he's a little bit busy with real life these days.
Yeah.
He had really good wet on wet techniques for real life paintings, and his aquarelle work was quite great. But like the problem with like real life painting is always like you need to set up your atelier for like at least 5 to 6 hours. I don't really have that much time. I can pick up the tablet when I can, and that's always the pro of digital painting. You don't really have that much of a setup, but real painting is so much better because the flow of the paint is more controllable.
The
And
analog
here,
effect is really nice when painting.
the analog effect is just superb. And another thing I would like to stress here is that uh, if you actually go and learn how to do like real life painting and come back to like doing digital painting, you will know exactly how to replicate the painting techniques. Because I've noticed like a lot of people that do like painting style has basically supplemented brushes and like you know the Photoshop brushes that make those fox looking like brush textures that don't have really the brush stroke quality to them. Like if you paint in real life, you will learn how to basically do proper brush strokes. I think like a lot of my art has this quality to them that I don't do solid lines, I do brush strokes, so everything is has a certain like quality to it that that has like patches of color that
It gives it
turn
that
into a
texture.
yes. And the whole thing is with digital painting, a lot of people will use pre-made textures because it's quicker.
Yeah, or because they
Uh,
never learned to do the other way.
or they never learn. But I've listened to a games developer conference video lately. Concept art is dead, where they basically show that the concept artist these days steals images from the internet and just photoshops them into looking something like a concept art, which it makes my blood boil, but at the same time I can see why. If you are to produce 20 pieces of art by I don't know by in a month, well yeah you have to take shortcuts, but the industry right now is just so bad for the quality, the concept. There's really little good concept art floating around if you even look at the art books.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's see if how this dries up. See how are the washes on this boy. Mostly dry, looks of it, but still needs a little bit longer. You could sell, for example, here underneath the arm, you can still see the shiny. It's still not sure how well that picks up on camera. It's like in person, you can see like it's still glistening, so it's not entirely dry yet. It's also here on the shoulder. It catches light in a certain way. That's
Still, I would say with the Outrider, the biggest problem here is that lack of those freeze effects that are so prevalent in the Dark Souls games for that specific.
yeah, the various boreal kind of enemies all have that kind of stuff.
I don't know how to feel about it, to be honest. It's like it feels to me it's like, oh, we've made a cool effect and now let's use it everywhere, but at the same time it looks pretty nice, so I'm not the one to
Yeah, actually, here for example, the helmet thing is not on glaive. I'd say it's probably more like not entirely dry, but we're gonna work on this guy a bit more, specifically the little wingies. So for that, I want to have those feather-like things actually look white. So for that, we're starting off with Vallejo model color Sky Gray, which is just a very light gray, which I like using as the basis for my stuff that needs to be white. Because working up to white from a grey is better in my opinion than starting with a white and then trying to shade it down, because it's very easy to make it look dirty. Other people will disagree on that.
Well, there is a school of just starting with a white,
Base coats and stuff.
base and go to the blacks, but then the problem with that is the black looks grayish, and you will never get.
If you want a very bright model, start with a white base coat. If you want to have a very dark model, start with a black base coat.
I think Elders worked so well with the white base.
If you want to have those crisp, clean, bright colors, bright greens, bright reds, bright yellows, that kind of stuff, white itself particular can also work if you're careful about it. Then you want a white base coat or a very light gray base coat. If you want to have like proper dark shaded areas and stuff like that, you'll probably want to start out with a black base coat. So for this, we're going to like start by just painting these little feather things gray. I've got my somewhat thinned gray paint, and we're gonna make sure I don't touch the metal part that they're set into, and I'm actually leaving a little bit of the like darkened edge from the dry brushing of the metal in there, because that should work nicely. Gives a bit of shading, because you don't have to like redo shading things there later.
Are those feathers like textured to be real feathers, or is it?
From what I remember in the games, they're also just like metal things, not actual feathers.
Oh yeah.
And they're too small to have like proper feather texture at this scale. So this guy, as you can see, I painted them on both ends, but now I need to like, because they're rather flat, I need to make sure I actually also paint the areas in between there. Being a bit rough on my brush here. As you can tell, it's now a very light gray. You might not be able to tell yet, but yeah, the white is going to make it even brighter. So it pops.
That's one of the problem with like analog things. The image of that is as good as your camera allows, which is sometimes not very.
Yeah, like I've done some older painting streams with really shitty cameras. That was actually, I'm gonna set my lighting a bit differently. That should help a bit as well in making things a bit brighter. Still a bit of a yellowish light, but this is the same light I paint by a lot in the evening, so. time for Formula 1 races again this evening as well. Gonna have to see if Ferrari's gonna fuck it up again.
I don't think I've followed the Formula One like so many years. I don't I don't think I have that much time following sports if I like basically workaholic all the time. It's just like
Yeah.
I have become true German. Like I come back home, all I can think, I müssen arbeiten. I mean, to be honest, like doing artwork as a job can be both frustrating and relieving, depends on how you're feeling. There are like days where like, oh god, like no, I'm not doing any of that shit. And there are days where I basically can like finish 5 to 6 pictures Monday.
It's just like you're in the flow and...
Yeah. Well, the whole thing again is like a lot of my artwork takes a long time because I actually like say that I want the best quality, and well, let me put it this way: people that buy porn don't really care much about quality, but at the same time, people that buy non-porn images, for the most part, don't really have that much money because either they're underage or they're trying to basically screw you over for like making actually good image for next to nothing, because they need like something for an advertisement, like a piece of concept art. The biggest problem, like it's like people that actually want like clean artwork and then they say I will pay you in recognition. Like no, I can't really feed myself with recognition.
Yeah, that's like, oh, you're gonna get some nice exposure out of this.
Okay, yeah, exposure. Yeah, nah. That's the whole joke, is that I've been like in the art business for like 15 years. 15 years now. I've been in the desktop publishing business for longer than that, and I can tell this, like people will try to undercut and screw you over a lot of times, and the funny thing is that with the furry art business, the amount of artists is high enough, so there's a lot of competition, and there's actually venues where you can say, oh, this guy tried to screw me over, and it actually works. In the real world business, you can say, oh, this guy will try to screw me over, and then you will get like people just defending that guy, saying, no, I know the guy, he's legit, etc, etc.
There's more of a self-policing community thing.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good thing and a bad thing, because if you screw up by, for example, like a random event, like I had recently, like power supply exploded, it can be you can explain it, but like a lot of people will disbelieve you, so if you, like, for example, like ask for money a lot because your financial situation is shit, well, that happens with people that are actually unemployed and stuff and can find a job, but just use the begging for money stuff, use the patron stuff sparingly, and you will have a clean record. I actually see, this is the weirdest part, but I actually love the very young community for one thing. It actually teaches you how to do good business. in a very cutthroat free market environment. There's no bullshit. There's no nothing. It's you and your product.
Deliver good product within the agreed upon time frame for a reasonable
Up
price.
Up to 2 years. Well, yeah, there's someone that did like a nice chart. It's like cheap, good, and fast, and it's like if someone is cheap and fast, it will never be good. If someone is fast and good, it will never be cheap, and if someone is cheap and good, it will never be fast.
Yep.
And that's true.
That's the case in a lot of cases, but yeah, art, that's very much one of them.
Yeah, it's why I hate like phrases like the art industry, the video game industry. If it's like a creative thing, you cannot really treat it as an industry because you cannot really produce ideas. You can think them up, but you will never be able to produce them, mass produce them.
Yeah. Blind Date basically summarizes it. Cheap, fast, good, pick two.
Pick one for now. No. There's actually like one. Okay, I will say this. I know one guy from Finland that actually is cheap, fast, and good, and I've been like commissioning him for years, and I became his like art coach, basically. But guy suffers from typical Finnish disease. Is basically like he will be exceedingly aggressive to anyone he doesn't know because social contact in Finland.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I've got the light blue applied to this blade here.
Yeah, that actually looks pretty nice.
What I'm gonna do for that next is I'm gonna give it a white dry brush once it's dried properly.
Mm-hmm.
So really make that texture that's on there pop out a bit and make it look frosty. At least that's the idea. We're gonna see how well that works out because it's not something I've done a lot in the past, so... But
yeah,
that's how it's supposed to work.
It's really hard to do that wispy, frosty thing they are doing in the game.
Yeah, so, but first what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply some white to the winglets. I think winglet is a good term for something like this.
Winglets, will they learn?
Yeah, like
the chat
is a wing. This is a wing. This is a winglet. So yeah, we're grabbing some white, specifically Vallejo Game Color Dead White. And we're not thinning it for this because we're going to use it like a dry brush technique, so... And here you can see what I'm doing here. I'm brushing it over my finger and you can see that it's generally only is in the raised parts of my fingerprint, so that means that there's little enough on the brush for a dry brush.
So, when I'm painting over here, actually, let me do a snapshot and post it. I know Linner is just going to go nuts because, oh no, I posting furry art. How could this be?
His day is ruined.
It's fucking fantasy art. He has to swallow that pill.
with the dry brush you generally need like a couple of passes on an area to really make it pop. You can tell now that they're starting to get some real contrast between the light grey and the white here. It's not like a ridiculous amount of contrast, but enough to spot it, which is what I'm going for here. I don't want cartoony levels of shading on this.
Actually, like, right now it looks very close to what it is in game. The whole thing is like, I always imagine Outrider Night having a little bit of a darker tone in it, but then again, it's in a very dark area of the not under the berg. And there you go.
Like if you dim the lighting like this.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a no direct light situation. In that case, both of them look quite a bit like. The sword needs to be brighter because it hasn't had the white dry brush yet.
Yeah. That looks close enough to what it is in game.
How the gargoyle looks in this lighting. It looks kind of dark, but that makes sense because the gargoyle in game, it's generally in open areas that are actually like it's got decent lighting. It's either on top of the chapel or it's in Anor Londo.
Yeah, Anor Londo. It's generally in places where there's a ton of sunlight.
Yeah, and space to flap around and be an asshole to you.
I did post the work in progress on the picture of mine in a image dump.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, it's based on Insolence set, which is I think one of the better designed sets in Dark Souls 2, because it's relatively simple. It has a lot of nice texture work. And it just feels good. Like, a lot of good armor is not over designed. It's relatively simple, and the whole thing with the Insolence set, which of course takes a lot to farm in Scholar of the First Sin. I actually managed to farm all of it in one go. Is it's staggered, and if you do artwork, those statters are going to bring so much personality to the picture. It's going to be really nice. Like the same stuff with the oh god, did I? Yeah, this is the wrong layer. Oops.
Well, at least you caught the enemy, right?
Yeah. I mean, with layers, it's really easy to just lasso the area that is on another layer and just put it over, but sometimes it's like, why isn't it changing? Oh yeah, another layer. Oh. Actually, we'll link another picture in the image dump, because actually that one is I think I've put about 50 hours into it. So I still consider it one of my best pictures I've done ever. The general consensus
for the sword, I've been doing like 90 degree to the blades direction for most of my dry brushing. But now I'm going to add a little bit in line with the blade, so that those like recessed areas in the middle, the central parts of them do get a bit of frosting to make the sword look more frosty, not have like big pale blue areas while the rest of it is like frosty white.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about, like texture work on armor. That's from 5 years ago too. Holy shit. Time flies.
Yeah, the texture on that armor, the wear on that armor, that kind of stuff.
Yep. On the sword and the shield as well. That's from Dark Souls 1, the steel set. It's certainly more impressive in high resolution, but due to like constraints on the art side, I was not able to post the high resolution. I actually could get away with it now.
What I'm actually going to do with the dry brushing is a little bit on like the cross guard of the sword as well. Very lightly. To basically make it carry through a bit the frosty white. You barely notice it, but...
Well, it has to be subtle.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, like painting armor like that takes a lot of effort, really rewarding, and there is a little bit of a market for it now. There's a lot of people that. Oh boy, is it Lin? No, it's Gio that is. Yes, I knew someone would complain. It's let's put a cheeky unicorn face to it. There you go. Now the shitpost is complete. Yeah, there's a lot of market for actual like people that do digital painting now, and I'm talking about like something that actually looks like digital painting instead of just like the. Do you remember illustrations in I believe 3rd edition D&D books?
I got into D&D with 4th edition, so...
Ah, you've missed out a lot. Hold on, let me actually find those. Those are fucking D&D 3rd edition art. Because it's a great example of... I found out how the blur tool in Photoshop works, and I'm damn proud of it.
Those classic... I think...
It's
not decent enough that I am willing to like finish at the bases and call them done. It's not like amazing work, but they should look good enough for gameplay purposes.
They might have actually cleaned the internet out of it.
No one must know their shame.
Well, let me put it this way. I am a big fan of Tony Di Terlizzi's artwork. Like this is how D&D should look to me, because I'm a huge into Planescape, and and his artwork is just, it has the quality of like fantasy, but it's like it's the closest thing we could get to like dark crystal like fantasy art as possible. It has that uniqueness to it, but the whole thing is he actually does this all in real media, or at least he knows real media enough that that it works. Yeah, he can translate it wonderfully. Like his stuff is just wonderful. And here's an interesting stuff, because like I followed him like for a long ass time, and I still follow his art. The reason he was hired by TSR is that the fucking people at his table that he did sketches for basically told him like, you can draw better than that, and showed him like artwork and like AD&D manuals, and he's like, nah. And then they're like, no, like send in your art to TSR, and they've accepted him as an illustrator from the get-go. And then like in like few years, he basically did all of the art for the Planescape books. That's talent for you. That's actual talent.
That's some buddies that you're happy that they convinced you afterwards.
Yeah, and Tony D's art is like, if you want, I wouldn't say like inspiration. If you want to see how unique the art can be when it comes to like fantasy art, because not everything has to like adhere to realism. His art is fantastical, but you can like tell that he has a fascination with insects. He has fascination with certain forms. If you manage to deconstruct that art and look what make it unique, and try to like think of what stuff interests you, and using that those interests to make your art unique, that's what you should do. The other artist I like to actually point out that has a very unique style and managed to stay afloat in these troubled times is, I believe, Armano, the Final Fantasy illustrator. I actually managed to screw his name out.
Yeah, looks like I'll have to like grab a silver and like a fine brush and touch up a few areas on the marking later. But,
Amano. There we go. Amano's style is just over the top, but you can tell like his major influence is actually actual Japanese art from the 19th century. But like stuff like this is fairly unique, and again, the fact he has very elaborate style. yeah, Amano is still producing art. He does not produce art for Final Fantasy a whole lot. He does promotional art every now and then, but overall he moved to greener pastures when it comes to producing art. I wouldn't even call his art a product of his time. He's just like this madman that does amazing things with watercolor and ink. And yeah. If you go by the professional look, he has one of the worst anatomies I've ever seen. He has no way to differentiate facial shapes for a lot of his artwork. His stuff is usually in very strange poses, but the whole thing is he managed to compose it into pieces where all of that fits in.
He's got weaknesses, but he manages to compensate for it.
Well, that's the same with Tony D. Like Tony D's art is very fantastical. Sometimes his like the way that his characters are composed is unnatural because they're like bent a little bit backwards, or like the frame does not fit the armor weight. But again, all of that is forgiven because his art has this fantastical flair to it that makes it believable. Remember, like this is actually a sign of a good artist, is where he can gloss over all of the flaws his art has with just style. But the problem is, never use "it's my style" as an excuse just to be in one place all the time. A true artist's journey is never over. Also, I think Tony Terrelsi is responsible for probably like my biggest like tons of fight I had with people over like how nulls look, because just I love his art so much. I just show him like Tony D's picture and like, this is a null. No. And they show me like World of Warcraft art, like art from the new stuff, and I'm like, no, that's not a null. You don't mess with Tony D. It's also it's nice to add one more thing about like there is a book, I actually own it and I paid good money for it. It's called Art and Arcana of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or out of Dungeons and Dragons, and it has tons of artwork from the beginning of TSR to the very end, and Wizards of the Coast. Ah, fuck! It actually has those really bad artwork from third edition.
That's like the early digital editing era, right?
Oh god, yes! It shows like so hard that they basically scanned decent sketches. Oh, they went to town so hard. But if someone has some spare cash, I do recommend and likes artwork, Art and Arcana: A Visual History to Dungeons and Dragons. It's done by Wizard of the Coast, so if you don't like the company, don't buy it. Just pirate it. But it's a good book. Art and Arcana, Dungeons and Dragons, yes.
one of the downsides of dry brush technique, as you might spot by the bases I'm currently redoing, is that you might get some paint splatter, especially on rough, heavy dry brushing. Which is why you want to do the dry brush stuff before you do any detail stuff that's anywhere near it. It's also one of the reasons why you can't just dry brush everything.
Except Necrons.
No, even there you need to do the glowing.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah.
I know. It's just that
you can't dry brush everything except skeleton warriors.
Ah, that's see that's a thing that doesn't really come up that much, because a lot of people just don't play undead in Age of Sigmar no more.
Well, actually, there has been a significant resurgence because they actually got a good and flavorful book.
Ah, finally.
Actually, there's some pretty cool mechanics. Like when you deploy, you need to set up a number of grave sites. 2 of them in like your own part of the table, the other 2 anywhere on the table. And you can units near those grave sites, summonable units, get healed. You can have units like hidden in the grave, so you can, if a hero is near a grave site, they can draw up that hidden unit. By spending some of your limited command point resources, you can even use grave sites to respawn dead units. And there's optional extra benefits depending on like what sub-faction you're doing as well, I believe.
Actual necromancer mechanics, how about that? Man, like people are asking me about the book names. I'm recommending a lot of books here, but it's basically like if you're into traditional games in general, like you want a library full of books from random topics. If you're actually trying to design a world, I recommend trying to get a lot of the herbology books. If you have a local covenant like an abbey, try to find them there. The monks actually produce a lot of good books on herbs. It's really good because you have the a ton of good information about how healing with herbs actually work, and what species to gather, how do they look, what are the effects, what are the bad effects. So if you're, for example, a druid, or you have a setting with like a heavy emphasis of nature, you might want to pick up that book and see how it actually works like.
Yeah, the real life inspiration, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's why I love the armor books, because I always get some really cool inspiration looking at actual real life armor and uniforms.
Well, just need to touch up a little bit, and it'll have been like about 4.5 hours of painting to get those 3 models ready for varnish, which is a pretty effective pace. I can see if I have something else flying around here that would be interesting. I could, like, if I had some like, I'm missing 1 or 2 key Gundam marker things, otherwise I might have shown some of that detailing stuff, but...
Yeah, I was hoping you would paint Gunpla, but the sheer size of it is kind of like unwieldy.
Yeah, let me just grab a kit to show in frame for, let's see, what's a decent medium-sized kit. Alright, let's just grab Skullbaldi. This is a pretty standard high grade, which is like the medium-sized Gundam kit.
Oh yeah, if you were to recommend a kit to person that wants to start collecting Gunpla, what kind of kit would you recommend?
Any kind of setting specifically you're interested in? Any kind of specific type of design?
I can only
do you
assume
want,
the
do you
more.
want like a Gundam or like some kind of grunt or?
Uh, I mean, let's go with like because a lot of people will probably want to start with a Gundam because they're more like standing out.
Well, let's see. Well, from what I've built myself, one kit that I really like is the Gundam Mark II and the Titans version, which is the dark blue and black with some yellow and red detail bits. Which is a lot better in my opinion than the AUG version, which is the classic white and blue and stuff. So this is the Gundam Mark II in Titans colors. And then after it gets looted, you have it in AUG colors. As you can already kind of tell, this one needs touching up. This has a bit more sticker work, like the yellow on the shield here, it needs to be stickered. And the color, like, some of the weapons like are supposed to be partially white, especially the bazooka it comes with it. Like, color separation isn't as good as you'd want in comparison.
I do have a question. Do Gunpla require painting, or is other major parts just done in a plastic adhere to the?
Most of the thing is in colored plastic, but some kits require some stickering. Like something that typically requires stickering is like the eyes on the kits. Now for this one, it's the eyes, the metallic green bits on this Mark II, so like the lens in the gun, the eyes, the head camera, the torso things, and you get like marking stickers. But that's about it for this one. But there are ones where you have like sticker larger areas and stuff. Alright, I need to fix something up.
Recommend like adding a little bit of wash to make the the lines where
well, there's several ways to do panel lining. You can use washes. You can also use like they have these markers which are like fine tip markers. I kind of fucked this one up. But you can just run them across the lines to detail them. That's how I did the panel lining on this kit, for example.
Ah, okay.
It adds more definition, and then you just use some kind of like some cotton tip to clean it off, because before it dries you can easily just wipe off excess. You can also use it to make like slight fade effects and stuff. You can also use washes, but washes are generally a bit more fiddly. I have done it. For example, this kit to the left here, the Char's Zaku 2. This is the kit from Gundam the Origin. It's actually a really damn good kit. Comes with a lot of like detailed bits like stickers and stuff. A lot of weapons.
Oh, that looks dandy.
Really detailed kit as well in terms of articulation.
And a lot of very good detail work that I'm looking at it.
Yeah, also like, let's just move it around a bit. Like, you've got the various joints here. Like, for the head, it's just got like, it's on a ball joint. But you actually get like a thing here that you can move around the mono eye to have it look in different directions. You also get an antennaless head. It's like this just sets up there. You can turn it around. It can move back and forth a bit. The arm here can go back and forth, and as you can tell, there's a joint in the torso, but part of like the side of the torso also can move forward, so you can move the arm further forward. It's got a ball joint there. It's got an extra ball joint on the shoulder that lets it go up a bit further, but like it's limited by the shoulder armor. It can turn over here at the shoulder. It's got a double jointed arm joint that can pretty much fold flat.
Nice.
And the hand itself is also a ball joint, and you get several options for the hand.
Oh. Well, yeah, that's...
Also a closed hand. There's a... For the right hand, there's a closed hand that doesn't have a trigger finger. And like the moving parts here as well. Like the shield is on a ball joint. You can see it over there. In fact, it's on a ball joint plus a swivel joint. And these missile pod parts, you can just take them off and put them back on. It's also got like a massive anti-ship rifle, and even here with the legs, like the skirting. These two parts can move. The side skirting can move. The legs can move around here. Can rotate over there as well. It's got a double jointed knee. The foot can move, and actually, see if I can show it. There's actually a joint in the bottom of the foot as well. So like the heel can twist. A lot of articulation, a lot of nice detail. You get a bunch of detail stickers that are optional for like the markings and stuff. Overall, it's quite a nice kit, built pretty easily as well, and a lot of like the nub marks and stuff are hidden away in places where you don't really see them, so... Right, and the torso also has a joint here. So go back and forth, and it's like a ball joint with extra. It's really nice articulation. This is a fairly recent kit within the last couple of years, and it's... Like, if you like Zaku's, or like iconic grunts, I can recommend the Origin version Char Zaku 2. It's not the cheapest kit around, but it's not horribly expensive, and it's good detail kits. So if you're starting with Gunpla, I would start with high grade kits, which are 1/144 scale and reasonably priced generally. Unlike master grades, which are 1/100 scale, so they're almost half bigger. Or real grades, which take the detail you'd normally find in a 1/100 scale kit, or even more, and then put it in a 1/144 scale kit.
All I can say is Legend of Galactic Heroes models when? Fucking Christ, just
also,
release them already.
Do not get this model. This is the real grade Zeta Gundam, which has ridiculous amounts of detail, and a functioning transformation mechanic and internal frame. And I'm not gonna move the transformation mechanic because it's a fucking pain in the ass to get it assembled. But one really cool thing about these real great kits is like they've got an internal frame that you put the armor pieces on. The joints are cast onto the internal frame, movable joints. They literally, like, you just cut like the entire frame for like a leg off, which has all the joints already inside, including areas like for the knees and stuff where you can put panels on and the panels will slide as the joint moves and shit. Really cool, nice and detailed, but you pay for it, and the transforming ones and some of the earlier ones are kinda flimsy. That one, the Zeta, has a bit of a reputation as a hand grenade. I'm actually going to do, once I've cleaned up this base thing, one little bit of painting for one of my Gundam kits. Specifically this Nemo, where you might be able to see these wrist things, the paint on them has worn off, because you're supposed to do that with stickers, but fuck no. Similarly, the cockpit hatch here, the red thing, that's supposed to be stickers, including folding around the edges. All the red on this kit is supposed to be stickers, but I decided to just paint it instead.
Why? Why stickers falling around the edges? That's a bad idea.
Yes, yes it is.
That yells to me like, bad idea.
But yeah, for a kit, it's a bit of an older sculpt, and for a kit in that price range they can't I think it's like a 12-year-old sculpt at this point.
Okay, fair enough, but still.
It's still sad. Well, even more recent kits, there's some that have like a... Oh, they've got these big panels on the back that are like metallic gold, but on one side and black on the other. Here's some big metallic gold stickers. Yeah, no. It's not something I try to go for, at least. That's why I generally look up reviews of kits before I buy them, to make sure that they don't have any glaring flaws. And they're not incredibly sticker heavy. The Nemo I just picked up on a whim. It's like, eh. Kinda disappointed that I had to do so much painting work on it, and now I need to do some fixing up, but... I could give a look at my biggest Gunpla kit as well, which is 1/144 scale, but... it is also an absolute unit. Might not be able to get it entirely in frame, actually. I'll grab it once I've cleared this up.
I need to change my diet. Like, breakfast of just fucking coffee and a energy bar is not a good breakfast.
Well, I had my
I basically
breakfast today, so...
Yeah, I'll probably do that here. I still need to like cook a pot of chili.
I'll probably be having dinner at the local pub while watching the F1 race, so...
You don't really have a good pub slash restaurant here. I know a few places, but it's just like... in the suburbs, you don't really have any good food. You have like decent food for the folks that just don't have time to cook for themselves.
Need to fix up a little bit here. There we go. Well, that's the Dark Souls minis finished to a tabletop quality. The Wing at Night. The Boreal Outrider. And the Gargoyle. So next is going to be fixing up that Nemo. Let's see. This is great. But I'm going to show you like what a big 144 scale, 1/144 scale Gundam kit looks like. And yes, it does not fit into the frame.
Why would it?
So I'm actually just gonna...
Oh shit, that looks dandy. Yeah, that looks swell.
This is the NZ666 Shatteria. So I'm not sure if I can get it focused right, but...
I think it's enough. That's a big model for you.
Including some
Yeah, that looks great.
The sleeve markings on the torso and the limbs and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Ended up having to paint that by hand. Because they had stickers for that, but... Yeah, you can't have like part separation on something that small, but... Kshatriya is a big machine, and it's got a lot of articulation, like the arms that hold those big shield binder things. They have multiple points of articulation, for example, including some like small locking clamps to make sure that they stay in place, even with the weight, even if you have them like at the 90-degree angle and stuff. Pretty cool kit. Not the cheapest, but I quite like the design, so like... One of my local game store started carrying Gunpla and actually had it in the range. I decided that, yeah, I'ma buy that shit. Yeah, we're doing some fixing up here. Specifically, we're gonna grab the arms of this Nemo. Which, as you can see, like for example the red and the thrusters and stuff, I had to do that by hand. These beam sabers in the skirt are actually loose. They can be removed. You can carry them in the hands. Add like there's a hole here. There's clear plastic parts for like the beam saber components. You should actually have it carrying a saber and the like. And one nice thing with Gundam kits is like, for example, the grey plastic here for this joint. It's a softer, more rubbery kind of plastic that wears a lot less than like the plastic used for the main bodies. So your joints remain stiff for a lot longer. Which is really nice, so you can actually like pose it and shit. And not just have it stand there as a display piece. So yeah, we're getting some grey paint. This is the color of grey I also used on that, so thin it a bit. Actually gonna move this around a bit so we can see it a bit more clearly. Yeah, you can tell that it's kind of worn there. Just gonna reapply some paint and then later gonna give it another coat of spray varnish. There's still some green on the inside of the thing there, but there's gonna be a ball joint hand put in here, so it doesn't really matter that much. This is the one that has fairly limited wear, but yeah, for this one you could tell that, yeah, the varnish didn't entirely protect it well enough and a bunch just scraped off here.
Well, that's the whole problem with you have like models with movable parts and you painted them. Is the paint will sometimes crack. That is always a problem with like metal models. If it, like
that's why you varnish properly. It'll make the colors on the
yeah.
model a bit more dull, but it'll really protect things, which is very important.
Well, sometimes you want the dull colors. Like the whole thing with like acrylic paints is that they tend to be glossy unless you know affected by a
Well, that's in fact the thing with
by a
the
varnish.
Vallejo model color range. Most of their colors are a lot less glossy, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here as well, if you look into it, you can kind of see the gray plastic further down for a poly cap that holds the joint. And you can see here for the arms, like there's a joint here that can move all the way up, so you can have the arm like that compared to the torso. The shoulder armor moves partially independently of the arm. This little flap here moves. This here turns. Single joint arm here. It's a bit of an older kit, but it still has pretty nice articulation. One other thing I might end up painting in the near future, I need to figure out, is some Star Wars. This is actually a pre-painted model.
Yeah, I was going to say X-Wings. The models are pre-painted. Why do you paint Star Wars?
Well, for example, if I want to play some Empire in the near future, you can see this is like is what I might do is make some ships unique. For example, I might grab one of my TIE LNs, like this basic TIE fighters, and give it like a blood stripe to mark it for like ace pilots. Or for example,
yeah.
I might grab an X-wing, and instead of all of them having the same color scheme, I might just like make changes so I can easily distinguish different pilots on the field.
Oh, I think
Fun little thing with like
I don't
an X-wing ship itself that they did have the first edition sculpt is
I think depending oh,
on the ship.
nice.
They really did well with that.
This is that little detail that people forget about.
In fact, for
yeah,
the
but
wing sculpt, it actually has like it can rotate on the base spec and it has a rotating cockpit apparently.
If I recall my Star Wars lore correctly, the colors of the X-wings, like the reds you see, those are interchangeable with blues and yellows of the different squadrons. So
also greens, for example, there's a unit of X-wings in the Star Wars Rebels animated show that has green color markings.
We don't talk about Rebels in in
it had
circles.
some decent episodes, but it had some horrible.
It has some decent episodes. Yes, we all liked the reunification of the team with Commander Cody. Yes, that was a good episode. But overall, the show was fucking Disney crap.
And talking about uglies, as Alec is, one of the guys at my local gaming store has actually like cut up and magnetized a bunch of his X-wing ships so he could magnetize them into various uglies.
Oh God, baby! Oh no! Except no! Oh no! This image is cursed. The
whole concept of uglies is pretty cursed.
The TIE wing is fucking cursed as fuck. Stop.
Well, something else I might want to repaint is I've currently got these two.
I need to stop looking at this. I'm getting upset.
A couple of Delta 7 Ether Sprite Interceptors, the Episode 2 Jedi Starfighters. If I end up getting a third one eventually, I of course will have to paint it in different colors, because these are in like the generic colors which Obi-Wan uses and Anakin's colors.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say.
Ahsoka's colors or something. Also got some
one thing that Rebels did right is Ahsoka turned out not to be a bitch in the end. Well,
she had a good teacher in being a bitch.
Oh. Well, Anakin certainly did not act in the cartoons like he did in the films. So, well, it still boils down to when Obi-Wan is in the frame, it's a body cop film. If Padme is in the frame, it's a romantic comedy for 6-year-olds.
Alright, there's one other thing I might do.
Oh shit, wrong player.
This little fella. In Lord of the Rings Dorf. I'm not 100% happy with how things look around the face mask. I'm not sure what to do about it. Like, it looks okay from certain angles, but...
Yeah, I can see that under certain angles it does not look that.
But I think it's an issue with the sculpt more than the painting.
It might be.
Yeah, the mask, now look at it closer, is actually asymmetric compared to like the nose guard of the helmet and stuff.
I think the worst thing is, like on the joint, in the place where the mask and the beard joins, it looks like the beard is a part of the mask instead of being the.
Yeah, there is an edge there, but it's that's only around like certain angles. It looks a bit. At least when you look from top down, it looks pretty okay. It's like. Yeah, but I think I'm pretty limited on stuff I've got like readily available to paint at the moment. So in fact, I think I might just call this stream a bit early.
Oh.
I was expecting to take longer on this, but
Well, fair enough. I mean, well, they did turn out to be pretty nice.
So yeah, I think I'm just gonna go grab the stuff I've painted so far, head outside and do some spray varnishing on it, and then I'll be done for the day. So a bit shorter than I booked, but it happens.
For me, it will be hours and hours of torture. I basically started, so that's going to be about 4 or 6 more hours of painting for me.
Well, have fun with that.
I won't. I'll be eternally Craig. Speaking of which, I need to donate to his Patreon.
Yeah, well, everyone, thank you for watching, and
goodbye.
Thank you for hanging out with me, Sol. And
as always.
I am planning on running these more regularly in the near future.
No, see ya.